you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, 'cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, 'cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, 'cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, 'cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. The Eye Test with Pierre McGuire and Jimmy Murphy.
The Stanley Cup winning Colorado Avalanche. And after 22 years, Raymond Martin
The sickest NHL podcast. It's gonna be sick.
And happy hockey, everyone. Pierre McGuire, Jimmy Murphy here on the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network. Yes, we've already had 2 games on Saturday, but the season gets going in earnest tonight with a nice 3-game slate of games that begins, Pierre, in less than 30 minutes out in Seattle.
Yeah, too bad for the National Hockey League that there's a thing called Major League Playoffs.
Yep. And one of those teams playing at that time, right head to head with them, is based in the New York metropolitan area in the New York Metropolitans.
And then they get the Dodgers later on tonight. That's fun too.
Yep. Yeah. So that's going to be tough drawing the eyes away from that unless you're in those markets that are playing. And even still, it could be a little tough given hockey's place in North America. But nonetheless, hockey gets underway. And then we got the Florida Panthers raising their banner from the 2024 Stanley Cup win against the Boston Bruins, who they knocked out in the second round. As of now, it appears Joonas Korpisalo will start for the Boston Bruins. He was first off the ice. Jim Montgomery's still leaving that slight window open for Jeremy Swayman to start. But Pierre, I just don't think it's a good idea. You already promised to start to Korpisalo. Swayman's got to be a little rusty. He's human. I say just stick with what you said before. Go with him and start Swayman against the Montreal Canadiens in the home opener Thursday. And then tonight, the Utah Hockey Club, Pierre, plays their first game in Utah, in Salt Lake City, against Connor Bedard and the Chicago Blackhawks. Are you excited for hockey, Pierre?
I am. I'm pumped. I was pumped last week, and I'm pumped every day for hockey, so it doesn't really matter. It'll be fun to watch Utah, especially having Chicago in there. I think that's obviously really good. Connor Bedard goes in there. It shows the fans in Salt Lake City, anyways, and across the state of Utah, how good Chicago potentially can be down the road. I still think they got a lot of growing to do, but Connor Bedard's the price of admission, so I'm excited to see that. I'm excited to see the fan base in Utah. The Bruins-Florida game is the one that really excites me. St. Louis and Seattle, I think, are 2 non-playoff teams. It doesn't really turn it for me that much. One of the things I'm excited about for that Seattle-St. Louis game, Claude Julien being back on the bench as an assistant coach.
Great point.
I'm pumped for Claude. I know he really wanted to get back working. I think it's a great opportunity for him, so I'm excited. And hats off to Jennifer Campbell. She's going to be the first, or Jessica, I should say, Jessica Campbell. She'll be the first female coach ever in the National Hockey League on a bench. So I'm happy for her. She spent a lot of time. She was a great player at Cornell, really good player at Cornell. Spent a lot of time working to get this opportunity. She's working with Danny Bilesma, obviously, and so we'll see how that works out in Seattle. But to me, that there's not a lot of sizzle in that thing because I don't think either team's going to be in the playoffs.
I'm with you on that. And before we go on, Pierre, I would be remiss if I didn't mention it. I think she's watching right now. A happy birthday to my mom, who's 76 years young today. So she doesn't look a year over 50. She looks a lot better than me. I'll tell you that.
That's good.
So happy birthday to her.
Yep. Hey, we got a guy coming on that just had his 91st birthday.
I know. I was just about
he
to
looks unbelievable.
Yeah, and he's probably sharper than both of us combined. No offense to you, Pierre. I know you're pretty sharp. But
sharper than anybody in the league, I'll tell you that.
Yep.
Jimmy, I mean that. I'm telling you this. He could still run a bench.
He could.
I wouldn't put him on the ice for practice. I wouldn't. But I'm telling you right now, if I had to pick one guy to win a playoff series just as a coach, he would be the guy right now at 91. He could still do it.
Yep.
I'm
very
excited.
Of course, that is Scotty Bowman joining us, the winningest coach ever, and just one of the most brilliant hockey minds and minds in general. And I can't wait to talk to him in about 10 minutes. He will be joining us here on the Eye Test. So you definitely want to stick with us for that. And of course, then we'll have our Q&A after that. But I always love talking to Scotty ahead of the season. We did it last year. And then, of course, we talked to him a couple times during the season, and we teed up the playoffs with him as well. So I like that. It's becoming my favorite tradition of the Eye Test here on the Sick Podcast Network. And it's going to be interesting. I want to ask him too, Pierre. I don't know if you saw it. You and I talked about it, but for our listeners out there who haven't seen the news, Igor Shesterkin turning down reportedly a $88 million deal across 8 years would be an $11 million AAV. to become the highest paid goalie. And I wonder if Gump Worsley would have turned that money down when he was playing for Scotty, would he?
Not forget Gump Worsley. How about Jacques Plante?
Or how about Ken Dryden?
Well, how about Glenn Hall? 503
Yeah.
straight starts.
I mean,
I don't think, and I mean nothing against these guys. I know the game's better. I do. The players are better. The game's better. But I'm telling you right now, you give Glenn Hall, well, ask Scotty, you give Glenn Hall, you give Ken Dryden, you give Jacques Plante, Turk Broda, give all the best goalies, whomever you think, Terry Sawchuk, and I think Scotty would speak in volumes about Terry Sawchuk. You give all those guys the same equipment, the same opportunities to train, the same kind of payroll. I think today's guys wouldn't be as good as the guys from the other centuries, if you know what I mean. And those guys played without masks, Jimmy.
I know.
And somebody's going to say, well, McGuire, they didn't have curved sticks back then. They did in the 60s.
Yeah.
Stan Mikita and Bobby Hull started the curved sticks. Hey, Boom Boom Jeffrey and I used to shoot the puck as hard as anybody with a slap shot with a straight stick. I mean, all I'm saying is I don't get these guys turning down that kind of money. Jimmy, here's what I'm prepared to say this, and I have no axe to grind with anybody in the situation.
No.
I'm telling you, if the Rangers don't win this year, I'm pretty close to sure that their window's going to close.
Mm-hmm.
So if your window closed, why are you paying a goalie that much money?
Pierre, that's a great point. So what you're saying is, look, even if they lock him up, past this year, you look at the rest of the roster and where they are in terms of age or salary cap and everything, what they will be now if you have to lock him up to such a contract, how that will affect them going forward. That's a brilliant point by you, Pierre. You really nailed it, because you look at it and you say, well, if we don't win the cup, it doesn't matter if we sign you or not. This could be it for at least 3 years. So
here's what you do, but you also got to look at this. You made a great point yesterday, okay? And this is the last time I'm going to pat you on the back. Is the New Jersey Devils are a team on the rise. Mm-hmm. So there's one team. There's one team in their division. What about Detroit? What about Montreal? What about Buffalo? What about, at some point, Pittsburgh's going to have to get going. What about Philadelphia? What about Washington? What about Boston?
Yep.
Yeah. So as much as everybody in New York thinks the Rangers are the be-all and end-all, they haven't won a Stanley Cup since 1994.
Yeah.
I'm just telling them what the numbers are. So they've been through this now. I'm going to say they're in year. So they did that letter like 5 years ago. 6 years ago, 5 years, whatever, the rebuild letter. Well, they're down the road on this thing, Jimmy, right now. So be very interesting to see if they don't, I'm telling you, if they don't get to at least the final this year, I think the window starts to close, because I think they'll have so much pressure internally to do something.
And look, I'm not trying to be like the Grim Reaper and, think negatively here about the future and the salary cap. I know the projections that are out there. I understand that. And I hope all those projections are true. And I hope they are fulfilled, that the salary cap goes to 100 million or more. I really do. I want
everybody wants that. Nobody wants it to go backwards.
But all I'm going to say is there are a lot of things that people aren't paying attention to. And we try to bring it up sometimes here in the show, Pierre. Whether it's TV revenue or other sources of HRR that may not be going as well as people paint them to be going. And there's outside circumstances that could affect that going forward. And, I think teams must be aware of that. And, I would think Mr. Dolan and Mr. Jacobs with Swayman and all these owners are aware of it. And they have to proceed with some caution. You can't just think in your head, hey, that salary cap's definitely going to 100 million. You don't know that. Well, none of us know that.
Here's some things to look at. The Canadian currency. Okay, because you've got 7 teams in Canada, and they pay. They still have to get to the cap. Everything's done in U.S. dollars. That's number one. Number two, and this is really important, local TV revenue. There are some teams. Boston is one of them that does very well. New York Rangers is another one that does very well. Montreal Canadiens are another team that does very well. Toronto Maple Leafs are another team that does, but there are other teams, and I will not say who they are. They know who they are. they're not doing nearly as well. In fact, I know some NHL teams that haven't been paid since last December for their regional rights because of the bankruptcy that's gone on with Bally's.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
You know, you just got to watch that.
These are real things. So am I bullish on the NHL? Yes, because of the caliber of play is so high.
Mhm.
But one of the redeeming qualities for the league, salary, or I should say, franchise values have gone up. That's really good.
Mhm.
And expansion fees have gone up, which is
Mhm.
really good. But that's not HRR.
No, that doesn't count.
It doesn't count. So, you know, it'd be interesting. The only thing I can say about expansion, which is good for the players, more jobs.
Yes.
Lots more jobs.
Yep. I'll agree with that. And look,
I
by
think
no means. Go ahead.
you're onto something that's fair, and that is everybody's predicting huge revenue growth, and there might be, but there may not be as much as you think.
Exactly. I mean, you know, I don't want to be Doctor, like I'm saying, I don't want to be Dr. Doom, but none of us ever projected that we were going to have to go through a pandemic. But life can happen, and there's outside things that can affect the league, and you just got to be real about that. And so I think that's why we're seeing some of these owners not just be like, here you go, Shesterkin, take that 11. Like, they got to think about it. They got to weigh their options, and then you got to weigh, okay, can I keep a competitive team if I'm putting that much into one player? Can I do that?
The one thing I'll say about Shesterkin, he's clearly betting on himself.
Yeah, good for him.
Because I respect that a ton.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now, if like I said, if anything less than the final for the Rangers probably won't be acceptable. And heaven forbid for them, if the Devils get there, or let's just say John Tortorella coaches as well as he did last year, and his team takes another step forward, which they could do because of the way John's running things down there. What happens if they pull a rabbit out of the hat?
I know.
And all of a sudden becomes a Cinderella story. You think the Rangers will be happy?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yep, we will see how that develops, how it affects the Rangers going forward. But as we said, on a positive note, hockey is getting underway. We'll have more games tomorrow. Pierre, you know, one team that obviously a lot of our viewers pay close attention to, and you are very connected to, going on the radio in Montreal all the time, is the Montreal Canadiens. They will get going against the Toronto Maple Leafs tomorrow. That's a team, Pierre, too, that's on the rise, as we've stated many times here. I don't know if they make the playoffs, but they're going to be a factor. They're going to be one of those teams that if I'm the New York Rangers and I'm trying to get the top seed in the East at the end of the year, I don't know who you're battling for it. Yeah. You don't want to play teams like the Canadiens. You don't. I'm telling you.
I totally agree. You know who's done an unbelievable job of causing pain in the NHL the last 2 years? The Columbus Blue Jackets.
Yep.
The Columbus Blue Jackets basically eliminated the Pittsburgh Penguins 2 years ago. They caused all kinds of heartache for the Detroit Red Wings last year. And I know Dylan Larkin's injury was part of it, but that's to Jimmy's point, where these guys are playing footloose and fancy free. They're playing for jobs, and they want to make sure that guys feel pain on the other side. Mm-hmm. And so that's not a lot of fun to have to play those guys. I remember once, and Scotty's about to come on, we were playing the New York Islanders in '92. And Scotty usually didn't address the team a lot before the game. But in this game, he did. And he said, fellas, we got a chance to bury these guys and keep them right out of the discussion for the playoffs. So let's do that tonight. And, you know, we didn't win that night. But the next few times we played the Islanders, we pulled.
Yeah, you didn't sleep on them at all.
How Scotty knew. We just, anytime you get a chance to bury a team, you just bury them. And let them feel the pain of being not being in the playoffs. Yeah, just continue to solidify your spot in the playoffs.
I'm with you on that. And Pierre, I look I want to go back out west there for a couple of teams too. Vancouver Canucks, I want to get your take on this. Obviously, they're playing it very safe with Thatcher Demko. He starts the season on IR along with Joshua. But, you know, I look at that. If all goes well and he heals well, they can stay afloat, do well while he's out, and he comes back and he can be healthy. I think that's a team that can go pretty deep. I really do, especially with the coach Rick Tocchet.
The coaching staff is elite. It really is. It's elite. I talked to one of their development coaches the other day. I was at a college game with him. I won't say his name. I don't want to get him in trouble. But he was really excited about where their organization was, and he couldn't. And he played in the NHL for a long time. He couldn't say enough about the relationship internally between all the coaches.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big part of it. When Vancouver took a huge step last year, Jimmy, I think they'll take another big step again this year.
Yep.
They've got a lot going on there that's really positive. They got, it's really good right now. And if you're a fan of the Canucks, or you're not a fan of the Canucks, hockey's important in that part of the world.
Oh my gosh,
it's important to have a viable Canucks team. It's a major city. It's a world-class city, and if you don't have a good team there, it causes problems in Western Canada. It really does. It's not good.
They are, it can get ugly. They are, though, one of the most rabid fan bases in the league. I love their passion,
100%,
and I wish them nothing but the best. All right, well, we'll get to that later. Let's get to our good friend and the legendary Scotty Bowman joining us here right now on the eye test. Hey, Scotty, how you doing?
Hi, James. Hi, Pierre.
Hey, Scott.
How's everything up there? You in Buffalo?
Yeah, well, we're not going down for.
Yeah.
I'm just hoping we can get down. It's right where we are. I mean, it's the whole state of Florida, James, but we don't know. I think we have to wait another 2 days.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I wish you guys the best, and of course, we wish everyone in Florida stay safe if they can.
I guess they're having a game tonight, and
They are.
they're over.
Fort Lauderdale, yeah, and Sunrise.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing! I didn't know they were. I mean, it's a couple of days away, but still, it's pretty close. Yeah.
Scotty, we were just before you came in, just talking about the goalie market, and I'm not sure if you saw, but Igor Shesterkin reportedly turned down a deal that would have paid him $11 million a year over 8 years. And we were just talking about some of the old goalies you used to coach, like a Gump Worsley, what he might have done with that money. I'm sure he wouldn't have turned that down.
You gotta tell him. Glenn Hall, Jacques Plante, Ken Dryden, these are all guys that Scotty worked with. I mean,
yeah, they were the first ones. Yeah. Well, Glenn came over from Chicago. In those years, most guys back when I was starting, they only had 1 year contracts, but the Hawks gave Glenn a 2-year contract. So when we drafted him from the Hawks, he had 1 year left on his contract, and his salary was pretty high for the NHL at that time. It was $35,000, and then he played. Of course, he won the Conn Smythe Trophy, and the second year because Seth Martin, we had an amateur that was our backup goalie, and he retired. So we got Jacques Plante to come in, and Jacques signed a 3-year contract. I think he got $100,000 for 3 years. Actually, the owner's the one that gave it to him. We weren't anxious for 3. He was 40 years old. But anyways, we had to go and sign Glenn Hall in the summer, the owner's son and myself, and so Glenn signed an extension for 1 year at a time, $45,000. That was a lot of money but he had won the Conn Smythe Trophy, and it was well. I mean, $45,000. It was worth it,
Hey, Scotty, I got to ask you this. It's obviously legendary. It's legendary about Glenn Hall, but he used to miss part of camp because he would say that he was out painting his red barn. Did that red barn really exist, Scotty?
Oh, nobody knew about it. He got 4 years out of the Blackhawks, and the first year with us, same thing. Can't come for the 6 weeks. I'll come for the last 2. So we were happy even that because there was rumors he might retire. He's 35. So that next summer when we had to re-sign him, I went out with the owner's son. He was a golfer too. He was playing in the Canadian Amateur Golf Tournament in Edmonton, and he didn't do very well. And then we went up to see Glenn and to sign, and we went up this country road. He was sitting on a rocking chair, and we said, "Where's the red barn?" He said, "I never had a red barn." I said, "I always leased my land." So he got 5 years out of that, because they trained for 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Yeah, and they weren't like today's players. Actually, James, the team that had a run in the 40s and up to the 50s, Toronto Maple Leafs, they had probably half a team that came from Western Canada that were farmers' sons. and they grew up on farms. I mean, I'm sure you saw the picture. I know Pierre did of. Remember the picture of Bobby Hull and also Gordie Howe? Both came from farming communities, and they were. I mean, they were exceptionally fit, but. You know, living in the East was a lot different. I mean, unless you came from a farm, but they caught up quickly. And then the big series in '72 was so one-sided to start because the Soviets were training for 11 months, and we were only playing, like Canadians were playing about 7 months. And obviously, when the summer came, they did other things. They didn't train like they do today, and it took them. Well, it took them like the last couple of games up over in Moscow to finally, after they played a couple of pre-tournament games, but you know to get back into condition to win that series.
Wow, Pierre,
Scotty, what's a trend you're seeing in the National Hockey League right now that teams need to pay attention to?
I would think the tough part right now, Pierre. And there's more than a few teams looking for depth on defense. It's really getting to be a factor that you know you although you can get by with a real super defenseman 25 minutes a night, but you need it seems it's hard to find defensemen now. I don't know. You know, maybe in the draft it's hard to some years they pop up, some years they don't. And I think that there's a real shortage of defensemen on even top teams. You know, Boston went out this year, though. I haven't seen them play yet. I'm anxious to see them play tonight. But they did go out and get some good size guys. I mean, isn't that right, James?
They got Zadorov, and you remember last year at the trade deadline, they picked up Andrew Peak. Young kid from Columbus who's pretty big.
Who was a big defenseman? The one in the playoffs, though. There's another big defenseman.
Lindholm.
What's his name?
Hampus Lindholm.
No, not him. Not a. I think it was from. He came from a university, or maybe Ohio. That was Peak. They brought Peak in.
That's Peak. That's Peak.
Yeah, but they have a Notre Dame guy.
But who's their top six now of Boston? I don't know.
So it's looking right now. It's looking like you'll have Zadorov, McAvoy, Lindholm, Carlo, and then maybe you're thinking of Mason Lowry, the young kid out of Ohio State.
From Ohio.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Is he a regular now?
Yep. He's on a third pairing now with Peak.
And isn't he big too?
Yeah, he is very big.
6'5".
He was a little skinny at first, but he's starting to bulk up.
He went back to Louisiana, Scotty, this summer. He gained 15 pounds.
Oh, yeah. Well, defensemen are not easy to find, and they often take a little more time. It's a tough position to play because, you know, you got a lot for young guys that come in the league. If they're defensemen, they have to make decisions at the blue line. I mean, when to keep it in, when to pinch. And they also have to make tough decisions back in their own end now. They can't really do what they did 10, 15 years ago. Once a player moves the puck, they can't take them out. They can't get interfered. They can't interfere. So they really have to be exceptional with the stick. And I mean, I think the size is probably a factor because the other players have to move around them, and it's interesting that they've changed. I know there's a lot of teams that they would definitely want the player that can handle the puck, but maybe only one of them,
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, well, Pierre would know Lane Hudson. Was it Lane Hudson, the young one?
Lane Hudson.
He's probably going to stay in. Is he going to play?
He's going to stay in Montreal, but I'll tell you what, I saw Cole Hudson play on Saturday night, BU versus Holy Cross, and Cole Hudson's real good too, his brother. Lane Hudson's going to run the #1 power play in Montreal. You would really enjoy him, Scotty. He is dynamo. He's just dynamic with the puck. He's so good.
Well, I mean, there's room for like a Fox, McGuire is a little different. He's bigger than most of those puck movers. Quinn Hughes in Vancouver is a very important defenseman. I mean, he's got to be rated. So I mean, to be a smaller defenseman though, And I don't consider McAvoy to be very small. He's the smallest probably on Boston.
He is.
But to be a little bit less than size, you really have to handle the puck.
Yep.
You have to be like an extra. They're valuable because you got power play, and you start a lot of plays. The defensemen have a lot of time to make plays, and if they're really good with the puck, you got a real asset. I mean, I don't know how. I'd be anxious to watch the game, tonight with the Panthers because they did lose. They lost Montour. And they also lost Ekman Larson, who developed into a good third pair guy because he can handle the puck, And then you threw in Forsling, you threw in Ekblad, so you got guys that could really handle the puck. I don't know who Pierre might know the names of.
Nate Schmidt and Boquist are the two guys they added, Scotty. I know it's not the same at all. The one guy we're forgetting there though is Mikola. Mikola had a real good
big guy,
Finnish guy. Yeah, he had a
good point for sure. Scotty, closer to where you are, a team that, I think a lot of people are wondering, is this the year they finally break through and get over the hump and make the playoffs, is the Buffalo Sabres, obviously. I'm just interested to get your take on them and also bringing Lindy back and what he brings back to that team.
They had a tough start overseas. I'm not sure if it was the best system. They went over there for about 10 days. They had a pretty easy game against the team from Germany. And they were, they lost to the good team, the Devils. I mean, the games were fairly close, but I thought the Sabres, they looked like the first game they looked pretty nervous about it. I don't know, and there's a lot of pressure on the Sabres right now. Even this morning I saw in the newspaper they're playing tomorrow night, home opener. They're offering a lot of tickets. Imagine a home opener. The fans are very fickle right now because they've had 13 years non-playoffs. Lindy has a lot of experience. I personally think he's the type of coach they probably need at this time. Something like Toronto hiring. They're not the same kind of Craig Berube. I think that the players will find out. They'll push them. I mean, unfortunately, some of the players are difficult to push now. They just shut you down. But I think the only problem with the Sabres right now, I like their young core defense. I do. I like their top four. Their bottom three pair is not that great, but they when you look at the league, the two Florida teams, Tampa. I mean, people look at Tampa and they say, well, they're not good as they used to be, but they still have 4 or 5 Hall of Fame players. And then you got the Panthers, the Stanley Cup champion. You got Boston, took them to a hangover run last year in losing that game. And then Toronto, I think, has improved. I think Toronto, with that addition of Tanev on defense, and they're young, they seem to have a little more depth. Mm-hmm. And then you've got to throw in those other 3. I mean, I wouldn't throw in Montreal right now, but they were creditable most of the season. But Buffalo, Detroit, Ottawa, you got to, only 3 get in, and then the next one's a wild card.
Yep.
So you're asking me, the pressure of getting in the playoffs and drawing people in Buffalo is huge right now. It's a real strong NFL town. The Buffalo Bills, they're a lot of have been in there since 1960, playing in the AFC and in the NFL. I feel for the Buffalo team because I think they have enough. I don't know about the chemistry. That's what going to be the issue. Do they have enough? They got skill. I hope they have enough. They tried to address the bottom 3 and maybe the bottom 6 getting some bigger. There was a big story the other day that Lindy was pretty happy with the way that Jordan Greenway stood up in Europe. Like he's this bottom 6 guy, but you need more than that. But they've never had players on their bottom. Well, they let him go last year. They let Gergensen ended up. He went to Tampa, and then Poso retired. But I don't know if they were the type of defensive players that they were looking for. They wanted somebody with a little bit more of an edge.
They better hope Ryan McLeod's that guy, because they traded Skinner to get Ryan McLeod. Scotty, I remember the day that you left Pittsburgh to go to Detroit. And the reason why Detroit wanted you so bad is they had so much bitter disappointment for so many years. And you found a way to get through to all those players, and you turned their franchise around. You win in 97, you win in 98, you obviously win in 02, your last game. Scotty, if you go to Toronto and you could give them any advice, because I think Toronto is just like the Detroit team you took over.
With the skill.
What do you tell them? How do you get the Toronto Maple Leafs going?
Well, you're right, Pierre. They've been a team that's been able to score, and now it's defending the lead. This is going to be a big factor for Craig Berube. Have they got enough of those players that are not going to have, looking at their own personal records, looking at their own scoring? Do they have enough grinders that, this is what the teams that seem to make it, they have those kind of players that they can defend a lead, they can sit on a goal lead. I mean, nothing more important than last season. I'm still amazed when I look at the records how this Florida Panthers team defended a 1-goal lead going into the third period. I mean, it was historic what they've done. And that shows you, and that's probably the reason that they finally won the Stanley Cup. I mean, they didn't have an easy run. They had some good teams they beat. And, playing against a high-scoring team like Edmonton, Edmonton had, had a lot of high-scoring guys, and Florida was able to really shut them down. So I would think that's Toronto's job right now. Is the Matthews and Marner and Nylander. That's okay. They're offensive players, and they're not real weak defensively, but they got to find the players that are going to complement them, that they can trust. And we got very fortunate. Montreal, same thing. We were a good team. And all of a sudden, when we got Riseborough and Tremblay and Lambert playing, Detroit was no different. We had Draper and Maltby and McCarty and Koser. We had some good foot soldiers in Pittsburgh, Troy Loney and those kind of guys, Phil Bourque. So that's the kind of player you need to accept that he's going to play 12, 13 minutes, probably maximum. He's not going to make more than $950 or $1 million a bit, and his teammates are going to make 6, 7, 8 for 8 years. It's a special player. I hope that they can do it. I mean, Toronto's been so dry for so long in the playoffs, but they got to show in the season that they're going to play the right way, which is defending leads.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Jimmy, before we let Scotty go, I got to ask him this one. One of our favorite players, Scotty and I, is Mario Lemieux. We had a good team to watch for a long time. Scotty, I spent some time with Mario this summer, and he was marveling at Connor McDavid. He said, I've never seen a guy do what he does at that kind of speed. In your career, did you ever see anybody like Connor McDavid, Scotty?
The closest I've ever seen to a player that you can't defend was Bobby Orr. Mm-hmm. Bobby Orr in his day. Now, you could make a case that in Bobby Orr's day, that he was a skater. I would say Bobby would fit in perfectly with today's player because he was the skater of his generation. He could accept. I saw him when he was 15 and 16, 17, and junior. Played against him a lot. And acceleration, and that's what, it's nice to say a guy can skate fast, but can he skate fast with the puck? And
right.
That's what McDavid can do. I know a lot of players that have been in the league that were fast, but they, nowadays they're all fast, but can you go at full speed and can you handle the puck? And that's a good comparison. For me, Bobby Orr was undefensible. You couldn't, I don't care what you did with him. And of course, being a defenseman, maybe even made him more dangerous because, you know, he came from the behind all the time, and guys would, you know, they didn't realize that this guy's going to take the puck and he's not going to give it up until there's a pretty good scoring chance. And that's the one that I look at the most is, but there's been other ones in the league, but I don't think there's other good players. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we know Pierre and we know the guy as a player. I always look at this guy, Sidney Crosby. I mean, you know, he's not going to have maybe the top scoring record, but boy, when you start rating NHL players of all time, you know, he's gonna get there for the people that know the game.
What a competitor! What a competitor!
Wow.
Yep.
How about this man, Jimmy? How good is this guy?
I know. I love it. He could run his own podcast and run us right off the net.
Before you say any more, I want to say this in front of everybody. I can tell you right now, that man could coach any team in the league right now and win more than anybody else. And
I agree.
this is proof. This is proof that he could still do it.
Yep.
I'd have to go to bed real early though.
You never did that. Hey, just a little secret out. Scotty and I were roommates. He never went to bed early.
He was a night owl, eh?
Well, I think when you're coaching and playing, I don't know about playing as much, coaching, but you know, when you're coaching a long time in any sport, and you're playing at night, and you're taking the game pretty seriously, win, lose, or tie. And in my day, you know, you didn't unwind very easily. So, you know, if you're going to get up in the morning, nowadays it's so much different. I haven't been able to figure it out. I mean, I see these coaches, they hit the dressing room sometimes, what is it, Pierre, 7:30, 8 o'clock now?
Maybe 7 early in the morning.
And, you know, so maybe their lifestyle's a lot different. I could never do that, but we were all taught to, you know, to think about the game after. But nowadays they get a complete review of the game as it's going. They got a lot of help with, I mean, I don't know how many teams I think they're using the analytics pretty well, you know. And I had a good story about 2 weeks ago, because I had mentioned it once on not on a podcast, but somebody asked me about analytics. I said, well, you know, I know they're important for a lot of people. I said, I said I personally like an eye test, but if it's a tie, if I'm not sure, I'm gonna make sure that I mean, I used to ask a lot of questions, so that's sort of like analytics. But I heard it was about a month ago, football panel between halves was Bill Cowher. I got to know him a little bit in Pittsburgh, but they asked Bill Cowher. Something came up, a play came up, and it was really interesting because the team had the ball. It was in a crucial part of the game, and they had fourth and about a little more than 1 or maybe 1 yard, and they chose to punt the ball rather than go for it. And they were a team that was really playing superb defense. And during the interview, Bill Cowher said, they said, what did you think of that call? He said, well, I'm not for it, because he said, I would have gone for it because my defense at that point in the game and in the way that they were playing against that team in that game, I had confidence my defense could do the job. And then somebody asked him on the panel, well, Bill, if you were coaching today, would you have analytics on your staff, an analytic coach? And he thought for a moment and he said, oh, yeah, you have to. But he said, I would tell them, don't you call me, I will call you. So that was a polite way of saying, I'll call you, but don't call me.
Oh, that's good.
Hey, Scotty, quickly, our man in charge back in the studio in Montreal, Sammy, is asking what was who was your team in the NFL? Who's your favorite team?
Well, since I came to Buffalo, I came here in the 80s, and I did run through the 90s with the great teams they had and didn't win a Super Bowl, the Jim Kelly era. So, you know, I'm kind of leaning. I mean, I've lived here for 40 plus years. So, Buffalo Bills have always been a favorite of mine, and naturally coaching in other cities. Somehow I got to know some people, and I always had an affinity for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I think a lot of it's because even defense, defense, and I got to know some of the guys, and so Steelers. I mean, they're not a high end team all the time like a glamour team, but they've had a hang of a run in the NFL, and nowadays, of course, they're not up in the upper echelon, but they're still hard to beat.
Yeah.
Hey, Jimmy, you know why Buffalo was lucky? They stole Scotty Bowman from the Montreal Canadiens, and the Buffalo Bills stole a guy that won all the Grey Cups in the 1970s for the Montreal Alouettes, Marv Levy. And Scotty and Marv know Marv Levy really well.
He's still in Chicago, and he's a lot older than I am. He's an amazing man. Like Pierre said, he never clicked in the U.S. for a while, and then he went to Montreal, and he never lost. And he came to Buffalo, and he's an institution here. He has showed up on occasion, and
there he is. He's back.
He's back. Yeah. We got you, Scotty.
We're going to let Scotty go now.
Did we go offline? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I did for a second.
Did I hit something?
We're good.
You're good.
What am I doing here, Pierre?
You're good. We can't.
Did I hit something wrong? Live? No. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
We got you, Scotty.
Yeah.
Nah, that's okay.
Oh, he's the best.
He really is. He really is.
Unbelievable. Jimmy,
where's my sound?
You good,
Scotty, we got
not
you.
Tech savvy either. I got Reds. I got, I don't know.
Okay, so Jimmy.
Maybe call me. Let me.
Yeah, take your time, Scott. While he's figuring this out, Jimmy, I want our viewers to understand this. He says he's not tech savvy. We would go to all these different places, and he would go find different devices to make our job easier as coaches. And one of the things was a portable VCR back in the day. I'm telling you, they weren't everywhere.
Yeah.
And he found them, and we got 3 or 4 for the team, and we'd be the only coaches in the league. We'd be breaking down the tapes on the plane. I'm not kidding you. We were like
a lot of things, but I'm not.
So he says he's not tech savvy. He's full of.
Sorry, something happened. I knew enough to shut up and start over.
Here we go. You know it, Scotty. Pierre was just telling us how you always made sure the coaches had the VCRs on the road, portable.
Well, the best thing I can remember what I did, and I would never be able to do it now, and thank goodness that the NHL coaches, it's been amazing what they've done as a group. NHL coaches, I get a lot of the information still, and I'm on a honorary committee with Terry Crisp and Larry Robinson. And, we get a lot of information, but they're getting their due, as we know, by the contracts and things like that. So those coaches, I was one of the first ones. Well, the first one was that we tried hard, myself and Al Arbor. We didn't get the first base, trying to help with the league. And then Pat Quinn came in. Unfortunately, both of those great coaches passed away. And Pat Quinn tried to help us. And finally, I don't know who to give all the credit to, but they hired a fellow that left them, and now they're still strong. And anyways, the Coaches Association, they made a little bit of headway. One of my last years, Pierre might have, I don't think he was, maybe he was in one of the games, and they wanted to interview us on the bench, or they wanted to interview us, so I think John Shannon was involved. He was always a technical.
Got him on here.
It was a producer, I think, or a director. But it was a U.S. telecast, and they asked me, "Would you mind getting interviewed during the stoppage?" And I didn't want to do it, and then somebody said, "Yeah, but if you do it, the league will maybe get sympathetic." So I said, "Okay, I'll do it." And then I didn't want to do it. So what I did, I turned the volume right off. I turned the volume off. And the guy, it was very nice. He interviewed me, and I started to answer the question, and they said, "Oh, no, technical difficulty, we can't do it."
That's
But that only worked once. That only worked once.
All right, Jimmy, let's let the big fella go.
I think maybe Pierre was between the benches. I don't think so.
Pierre would have known your trick.
Oh.
Thanks, Scotty. We appreciate it. Thank you
Scotty,
so
you're
much.
the best.
Appreciate
Okay.
it.
Thanks, Scotty. Say hello to Scott. Bye.
Bye.
All right,
Bye.
enjoy the hockey. What a joy he is.
Okay.
That's great.
You
That's great.
recreate that. Try to recreate that.
I know. And you know what I love, Pierre? You must have said,
Mm-hmm.
okay, let's let him off. He didn't want to go. He'll
No,
keep
but
going. He's great.
You know what? I respect each time when I tell him something.
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
And, you know, again, he's like a dad to me. You know, we lived together. We did a lot of stuff in terms of winning and building programs and talking a lot. And I'll never forget when he went to Detroit, and he's underselling that. He's giving the players all the credit. He had to change the whole culture of the Red Wings, and he did it. And look, I'm not going to tell you on the air because it's not appropriate for me, but there wasn't a thing that he was doing there that he didn't tell me before he did it.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking on the phone. I had left Pittsburgh. He'd left Pittsburgh. I went to Hartford. He went to Detroit, and he had a plan, and the plan worked.
And he
It
executed.
didn't work right away because people probably remember this now. Jamie Baker, Game 7, San Jose versus Detroit.
Oh, yeah.
Knocks them out in the first year, and then they started to go. Then they go to the final. They lose to the Devils.
Yes.
But you look at it back then. Colorado was stacked up. Like, start looking at it. Dallas was stacked up back then. Detroit was stacked up. So to get out of that whole West was really hard. And he found a way in '97. He found a way in '98, and obviously in '02. But they lost. I think the thing that turned it around for them is they went and they played the Devils in the final, and I was there with them the whole time. I wasn't working for them, but I kind of was because I just started in the media, but I wasn't working for them, but I was helping them, and you could see the whole thing around Detroit was starting to turn. You could see.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I see a lot of him in you, Pierre. Hope you know that.
Everything that I know, I learned from him, and he never stops to credit Claude Ruel. He never stops to credit Frank Selke Sr. He never stops to credit Sam Pollock. You know, that's the thing about Scott is he's got all these people that helped him and taught him, and he never forget. You heard what he said. You know, we started to change in Montreal when we got Riseborough, when we got Tremblay, when we got Lambert. Like, he acknowledges the players that helped them win.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody knew who the stars were. Lemaire, Schutt, Lafleur. Everybody knew Robinson, Savard, Lapointe, the big three on defense, Dryden in net. Everybody knew those guys. Mm-hmm. They needed sandpaper guys. And you see what he did with Detroit right away. Draper, Maltby, McCarty. Yep. Didn't take him long to name those guys.
No.
How about our good buddy Bubba Bork? You remember Borky right away and Troy Loney? And I'm going to give him poop when I call him afterwards. He forgot Trotz. He forgot Brian.
Yeah.
I probably didn't forget him. But I'm going to call him up anyways.
Yeah, he probably puts Trotz though in that star category. Even though I know he changed his role with Pittsburgh here, but
the ultimate compliment, and I think Scotty would agree, and Mario definitely would agree. The ultimate compliment you could pay Brian Trottier. He checked his ego at the door the day he got to Pittsburgh. And he knew his role. He wasn't playing ahead of Francis, and he wasn't playing ahead of Lemieux, and he had to change, and he did. And I've told you this a million times. And, you know, it's nice to hear the players acknowledge it when they come on with us. Right. Brian was a linchpin for us. He was critically important for us, critically important.
Yep. I know when you speak about him, Kevin Stevens always texts me and says, it's dead on. Yeah.
You had to be in there. So that's one of those. It's kind of like Scotty. Yeah, got to be in the room to appreciate those guys. Like, you see what they do, and you see how they interact with their teammates, and the other guys that are stars are like, he checked it at the door. That guy was ready to play.
Yep.
And by the way, I know Kevin watches a lot. Scotty loved Kevin. Scotty, trust me. He said, push him harder in practice. Because back then I was doing the practice. He said, push him harder in practice. Push him harder. he wanted Kevin at 60 goals. He's like, get him there. I'm like, okay.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. Well, I saw some of our listeners updating us. St. Louis and Seattle 0-0 right now, halfway through the first.
Yeah,
but
I'm really watching paint dry, Jimmy. Don't worry. Tune on.
Yes, but if some of our listeners and viewers want to get a little live bet there, a bet on the rest of the hockey tonight, the baseball, and all the hockey going on this week, you want to go over to Betway right now because they're the leading global online betting and gaming brand. Follow your gut instinct. Go with Betway. Go to Betway.com, or if you're watching right now, scan that QR code right in front of you to join the action. You must be 18 plus and play responsibly. Go check out Betway right now. All right, let's get to the Q&A right now because, man, they're lining up watching Scotty.
Before you go there, did you enjoy that?
I don't think you need to ask that, Pierre.
Yes,
of course I did.
I'm
like a kid in a candy jar there, man.
I'm spoiled rotten. I get to talk to him, almost whenever I want, and like that never gets old. And every time I hear him talk, he teaches me something new.
Same here. And Pierre, I think being in this business, even when you were young, as a coach or as an announcer, when you get the privilege to get to know people of that caliber, it's an honor. And you have to stay neutral as a reporter or media, obviously, but sometimes you just can't deny greatness in front of you and understand, like, wow, like it's just times when the awe just comes out. And I don't know if you saw my face during that interview, but I was just in awe the whole time. And that's how I am every time I talk to Scotty, because as you say, I learn something new every time. And to have him now look at me on a personal basis too, it's quite an honor. And I appreciate that. And you made that happen. That's Scotty Bowman. Let's do it. Q&A. Here we go. GB, was Bobby a better skater than Coffey? I'd say yes.
Here's what I'd say. More, because I was on the ice with Koff a lot. Bobby was way more, and I wasn't on the ice with Bobby, but I watched them all the time. He was a more powerful skater than Paul. I think Paul might have been quicker. Mm-hmm. Bobby Orr was more powerful. So it's kind of like McDavid versus McKinnon. I think McDavid is faster. I think McKinnon is more powerful.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
That makes sense. All right. Next question. Nathan Mulcahy asked my father a month before he died, who was the best hockey player ever seen? Bobby Orr, even more than Gretzky? Yes. So I've always gotten the same answers too from my elders as well.
So I've always said in my book, I have Mario number one only because of the seat I had to watch him and to work with him. So that's just allegiance, probably, and blindness for being allegiant. My second is Bobby Orr, and my third is Wayne.
Yeah, I mean, in terms, so I'm just going on what everyone tells me is Bobby Orr, but in terms of what I've seen as a reporter, I got to put McDavid at the top right now.
I think he's going to get there.
Yeah.
Here's the one thing that he has.
I never get to cover Mario though, Pierce. That's
that's fair. But here's part of how you have to judge it. Are you the lead dog for a championship team? Mm-hmm. And McDavid knows. Why do you think he was so upset last year? Yeah, he won the Conn Smythe. He didn't want to go get it.
Nope.
So he know. Like, I think he's great. Please don't get me wrong. He's off the charts. That's why I brought his name up. Mario and I were talking about him this summer, and we were just both blown away how good he is.
Yeah.
But until you win, you never get to be mentioned in the same breath as the guys that won.
I know. And Pierre, can you imagine, as I was thinking when I was listening to Scotty talk about Orr, you imagine him without the red line? Like,
could you imagine him with a carbon fiber stick?
Could
you imagine him with two good knees?
Jeez. With the technology they have, with the medicine they have.
He would have been special.
All right, next question. Yep. Next question. Ron LaRoque, if Montreal goaltending doesn't take the next step this year, does this push back management's plans of where they want to challenge for the Cup? No, I think, Ron, because they've got Fowler coming. I think they're looking at these two guys as sort of the step to Fowler.
They're the seat warmers.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. That's exactly what I'm trying to say.
They're the seat warmers until Jacob Fowler and Jakob Dobish are ready. That's what I think.
Yep, I'd agree with that. All right, next question. John Smith, how are the games played / performance bonus counted against the cap? Does the team have to assume that the player will reach the number or make the moves in consequence if they do during the season, Pierre?
I'm not getting into an accounting foray. It's a very good question. Get me John's contact and I'll get it.
Yeah. All right. Next question. GB, what is the key to success for the Bruins defensively? I think to just play within their structure and play to their capability. I think, the skill, the size that Scotty was pointing out there, it's there. Just execute. That's it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the other thing too is they've got to be better with their forwards. I think down low in their zone in terms of support. But no, I think it's what you just said. I see the Bruins as being a very difficult team to play against this year.
Yep, I'm with you on that. All right, next question. Randy Workman, how much is Martin worth? That's
very good question.
We go up and up, I'll tell you that.
I'll tell you one thing, he's not worth more than Austin Matthews.
No.
And it depends on how you view a player.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll just take you a little bit inside the Kachuk negotiation that I was part of in Ottawa. I thought the perfect comparable was Svechnikov. Svechnikov might be a better pure goal scorer, but he's nowhere near as physical as Brady.
Right.
Nowhere near.
Yeah.
So Brady got a little bit more money than
Yep.
Svechnikov.
There you go.
So, so you have to look at how it fits on the team. But Marner's worth. Don't worry. He's worth money.
He is. All right. Next question. Max R. What's the longest between cup wins for a coach with the same team? Longevity for coaches is hard to come by nowadays. Yeah, you can say that again.
Longest between cup wins.
Meaning a coach that stayed with a team. Let's say he won a cup in 2002, and then he went, I don't know, another 5 to 7 years or something. I don't know. That's a good. I don't know.
I'd have to go back because well, Scotty
97 to 2002.
Yeah, that would be yes. That's one. I mean, Scotty started in Detroit in the fall of '94, and they won in '97.
Right, but he's saying to win and then
win and then go
and win again.
I'm going to say Scotty might be the guy.
I think it might
I have to think. I mean, you got to go back over time, but
yeah, Max, let me look that up, and I'll come back with you tomorrow on that.
That's a good one. Make sure you keep that other email address because I want to answer it.
Yeah, and it's interesting though that because I was seeing about somebody talking about the lifespan of coaches right now. It's going to be harder and harder now these days.
Well, but I think I talked to you about this off the air. What do we have? 14 or 15 that changed over in the last year or so. Well, I think that's a byproduct of the general managers having tons of power and blaming their stuff on COVID. Mm-hmm. And I think that's going to flip this year. I think there are a lot of managers that are under the gun this year. I really do. I think it's going to be a big difference this year. I think some owners are going to say, whoa, wait a second. You've been telling me that it's the coach's fault, and all of a sudden the coach is gone. We changed the coach, and the team's still the same? No, I'm not buying that. So I think there are a lot of managers that are going to be under the gun, a lot of them this year.
One of them we spoke about there in Buffalo. All right, next question. Groke 2.0. Hey, guys, can you somehow get some Habs fans to relax on Lane Hudson being on the second power play unit and Matheson on the first? It's unbelievable that people are losing over this.
Well, I'm going to take some blame for that because I've been pumping Lane's tires for a long time, and I don't think the Canadiens do a lot wrong, especially with this management team. This is one decision where I think they are wrong. That being said, I completely understand why they're doing it. Mm-hmm. And it's a matter of taking time to get him up to speed. NHL penalty killing schemes are way different than college schemes, and professionalism too. It's just older players that understand how to play. So, but I've been putting it out there for a while, as you know, Jimmy. I'm a big bullish guy on Lane Hudson. I think he's really good. But just go. I'm with the call. Just go easy. Matheson's a real special player, and he's an awesome person. That guy, you don't want anybody else in that organization working with Lane Hudson than him. That guy's a really good man.
Yep. No, I love it that he's there, still there, and I think they're going to be happy they didn't trade him last year. All right, next question. Marvin Matthews. Pierre, what are your thoughts on Dylan Holloway and whether he can be a point producer with St. Louis?
I'm a big fan. I watched Dylan play, obviously, Wisconsin for Tony Granato. Watched him play in the World Junior for Canada. I thought when Edmonton lost him, that was going to really affect them in terms of quality depth scoring. I think if he gets an augmented role where he moves up maybe from the third to the second line, he can make a big difference. He's an elite skater. He's not afraid to grind. He's a real good forechecker. He can force turnovers. I think he can do really well. I think he can do really, really well.
All right, next question. Randy Workman, Jimmy and Pierre, who has the best defensive core in the NHL? I'd say Boston's in there right now, I think.
Yeah. I'd say Vegas is still in there.
I think Vegas is still in there as well.
I think Dallas is still in there.
Yep.
Dallas is still in there.
I'd say those are the top three. Maybe Florida.
Don't forget, Jersey's going to be interesting.
Right, because they've added some grit. They're not just
Pesci's a good ad. Hamilton is back. You know, Brendan Dillon's a whole lot of nasty. We saw that. You can ask Alex Tuck fighting it. By the way, hey, Alex Tuck showed a lot of guts. A lot of guts fighting that guy.
All right, next question. Filterless Bear. Hey, Pierre, why are the Habs not using Jack Guy and his 107-mile-per-hour slap shot on the PP? Is it to keep his next contract affordable?
I love the thought, but no. I think it's one of the things for Arbor is you don't want him to lose his identity as a player. And yes, he can shoot the puck at 107 miles an hour, but it takes him a while to get it off, and maybe he fractures an ankle of the opposition. But I think at this point, anyways, it's probably better to have him concentrate on being a stopper rather than an offensive guy.
Yep, I agree with you on that. All right, next question. GB, is there profit sharing in the NHL?
So that's a fair question. All I'll say is there's a thing called the Canadian Assistance Program, and that's why they have a floor on the cap, and that's why they have a ceiling on the cap. And in order to be able to participate in that revenue share, which it is, you've got to get to the floor, and everybody has to get to the floor. So, yeah, no, there is a subtle little way of revenue sharing. Yes.
All right, what do we got? Next question. Cuckoo69, Habs or Leafs tomorrow opening night. Who wins and why? I'm going to go with the Habs. I think I don't know. I think everybody's going to be talking about Toronto, the focus on them, Berube coming in, the expectations. I think the Habs go in there and steal one.
I think one of the things the eye test has to put out is when I asked Scotty about when he went to Detroit and what he did to get the guys turned around and what he would recommend to Berube to get his team turned around in Toronto.
And Pierre, you might remember, you said the other day, it was late last week, I'll have to go back and find the tape, but maybe you remember, you were talking about a goal that was scored by the Leafs that had Berube's handprints all over it.
Yeah, there was a goal in preseason. It was 3 heavy forechecks by the Leafs, and eventually the pucks go to Ryan Reeves behind the net. He puts it out front, and it gets put home. I think that was 2 days, maybe yesterday it might have been. I think when I talked about it. But yeah, no, that's a Craig Berube goal.
That's how they got to play.
We saw so much of that in St. Louis with Ryan O'Reilly, with Braden Shen, with Ivan Barbashev, with Alexander Steen. I mean, you go back and look at the team that won in 2019 in St. Louis. Berube's fingerprints are all over that team.
Yeah.
Not a lot of star power, just guys that play what he wanted. Now they got stars, and hopefully, like Scotty said, their grinders start to wake up. But that's one thing. Every single manager in the league should hear that, what Scotty just said.
Oh, I agree.
And you hear he's just lukewarm on analytics.
He didn't discard it, though. So,
no, but I liked what he said. He says, that's why I like the eye test.
Yeah. He's a perfect commercial for us, isn't he?
Yes,
all right, next question. Magnus the Sheltie. Refresh my memory on Scotty and chewing the ice behind the bench.
You'd always have a glass behind him, and it would always have ice cubes in it. And rather than chewing gum, you would just break some ice.
Really?
Nothing
I never knew that.
One of the guys that copied him was Mike Keenan, who we're going to have on this show because he's got a new book out. And we'll get Mike on. Mike's going to coach the Italian national team at the Olympics in Milan next year in 2026. So we'll have Mike on. But a lot of guys copied Scotty chewing the ice. A lot of guys copied him chewing the ice. But he'd have our equipment manager used to have to put, I think it was a Gatorade cup back then, and they were a sponsor of the league, and they put the Gatorade cup there and it'd be full ice, and you never touch that. Like, you didn't touch his ice. Don't go near his ice.
I hear you. Well, we got time for a few more. I see a couple more there. Yep. All right. We're going to do those. Let's put them up there.
Yeah. Come on.
Magnus Shelty again. Is Mason Lohrei the answer for the Bruins power play issues? I think he already started to help last year. He's going to only help more.
How about Scotty? He knew he was right away.
Yep.
Well, he was talking about a big defense. He probably didn't know his name, but he knew that Bruins had. He watched them, and he's like, I like that guy.
In the playoffs, yeah. He came into his own a bit there. All right, next question. Does the fact that the PPs now only use one defenseman reduce the need for teams to spend on offensive D-men? That's a great question.
It's a really good one, but no, I think if you heard Scotty, you got to have those puck. If you're going to have a guy, you got to have puck movers back there. And if you could have two, I don't think you need more than two, but if you could have two, it's good. Preferably like Montreal, like Caden Gould. I'll give you an example. Caden Gould is a really good puck mover. Mike Matheson is a better puck transporter than a puck mover, if that makes sense. And Lane Hudson can do a little of both.
Okay.
So then you can have a guy like Savard. You can have a guy like Jack Guy. You can have these bigger guys, Jaden Struble. You can have those guys because you got those other guys that can do that stuff with the puck. And that matters. If you have two of them, it's great. If you have three like Montreal's starting to get to, that's really good.
All right, next question. Favorite baseball players of all time? I know.
I got one. Go ahead, Jimmy.
I'm going to say Pedro Martinez.
Mickey Mantle.
Mickey Mantle. All right. In my lifetime, it's Pedro. I was thinking, though, as I saw that question over there getting ready to, be asked, Pierre, and I'm thinking in my head, who would be the manager equivalent of Scotty? Obviously, nobody's ever won as much as him, but in terms of style, in terms of thinking the game, in terms of...
I can tell you who it is. You want me to tell you?
Go ahead.
Joe Torre. Scotty and Joe Torre are real good. There were three guys. There were three guys that used to chat a lot. Don Shula, Scott Bowman, and Joe Torre.
I love it. That's some brain trust right there, huh?
But those were like at that time when Scotty was in Detroit, Joe was in New York, and Don Shula was in Miami. Those were the three winningest coaches of all time in their sports, I think, at that time.
Wow.
In that era.
Yeah. I wonder if put Bill Belichick and Scotty in the same room, huh?
I think it'd work. No, that'd be good.
Yeah.
I know one thing. I remember when Chuck Noll was coaching Pittsburgh, Scotty and I used to see him a little bit. I remember when Coach Cowher took over. He'd come to the games. Jack Lambert, for those that are football fans, Jack Lambert used to come to all the games. He loved Elfie Sanderson. He just thought Elfie Sanderson was great. And Jack Lambert was good, Jimmy. Like, I don't know if you're old enough to remember. He was a great football player. Well, played at Kent State University. He was a linebacker. He was a whole lot of nasty. He was a nasty guy on the field. Off the field, he seemed really nice. But what was cool back then? Mr. Palmer, Arnold Palmer would come by the room. Bobby Bonilla would come by the room. All those athletes in Pittsburgh, because we didn't have an NBA team.
Yeah.
So the hockey team in the winter, that was like it. And so before the baseball team would go down to spring training, or when they got back from spring training, hopefully we were still in the playoffs, they would always stop by. Bonds and Bonilla would come to a lot of games. Mr. Palmer, Arnold would come significant amount of games. It was pretty cool. It was a cool time because the team was good too. So, and we had, whether it was Bob Johnson or Scotty Bowman, we had all these, elite coaches. So everybody kind of wanted to hang around our place.
Good stuff. All right. Well,
I couldn't tell you. Remember when he said I couldn't go to bed at night? Yeah. So he wouldn't let me go in. So we would go out for these late dinners. Every town we're in, we'd go out for these dinners. Like 11:30.
That's how you know all those restaurants, Pierre.
One day he gave me a hard time. I'll tell you, it's a quick story. It won't take more than 30 seconds. He said, "Why are you always at the rink so early? Why are you always at the rink so early?" I said, those tapes that are on your desk that you just plug into the machine and you turn it on and they're ready to go? Who do you think makes those? Do you think there's like a tape fairy that just makes them for you? I was like, he must have punched me the wrong way or poked me the wrong way that day. And I was like, the tapes are on your desk because we make them in the middle of the morning, like early, so you can show up and have them. What? I didn't think of that. And he winked at me. I didn't think of that. I'm telling you what, you want a good roommate? He'd be a good roommate. If you like hockey. If you don't like hockey, he'd be a bad roommate.
There we go. There we go. Well, I appreciate you setting that up here as always. What an honor it was to have Scotty Bowman here on the Eye Test. Thanks to all our viewers and listeners for tuning in. Of course, to our production crew up in Montreal. Always a pleasure. That's a great way to get the season. Let's go enjoy the hockey, everyone. Until tomorrow, he's Pierre McGuire. I'm Jimmy Murphy. This has been another edition of the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Eye Test with Pierre McGuire and Jimmy Murphy on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.